Patreon did an oopsie. Patreon did a big oopsie last year when they pissed off a good chunk of the internet by banning Sargon of Akkad, which snowballed into a situation where a lot of people left Patreon because they did not believe Patreon was a safe platform for creators, since they were going to police content and police creators' actions outside of Patreon.
But only on certain people.
Only certain people.
Because they proved that there are people saying similar things that are on there, and they weren't being,
Correct.
Nothing was done to them at all. So it was like certain people, it was too arbitrary for people to feel secure. It was arbitrary.
Patreon's Trust and Safety Committee basically was going around policing Patreon users that they didn't approve of for their personal opinions or politics or whatever, and finding loopholes, I believe loopholes, to get them off the platform. So they kicked Sargon of Akkad off of the platform for using the N-word on a podcast 10 months, I believe, before he was actually it was 10 months before he was actually kicked off. It wasn't even his stream. It was another YouTube account, and it was taken out of context as to how he used it, but they used that loophole to ban him from the account. Now, he was pulling in like $10,000 or $12,000 a month in backing. Well, whether or not you agree with Sargon of Akkad is not the real issue. The real issue is it led to a domino effect where other notable Patreon users suddenly pulled out.
Right, because of the arbitrariness of it, and the fact that if I say something you don't like, well, then you'd ask them, well, what is it that you said? Well, it's on a case-by-case basis. Like, there's no rubric for what is allowed and what isn't. And so people were like, so it's arbitrary depending on how you feel that day. So people were concerned about the arbitrariness. I keep using that word, but that's what it was, how arbitrary it was.
So this Jacqueline Hart, she was kind of at the center of this controversy. Now, she was apparently a former PayPal employee that now works for Patreon, and her team, the Ministry of
Defense
here, they decided that Sargon was not worthy of being on the platform anymore, and they tried doing some damage control. The New York Times did an article, and it was very, very vague as to what the criteria is to be kicked off of Patreon, and it didn't make a lot of users feel good. Again, you don't have to agree with what Sargon of Akkad says, but the point here is that Patreon, if they don't like your behavior outside of their platform, they can remove you. But it also didn't make a lot of users feel very safe either, because a lot of users canceled their Patreon accounts.
Well, not just that. There were users who did nothing wrong and got their account suspended. Yeah. And in the article, they said, well, we give every opportunity. We contact them and give them every opportunity to reform, to our guidelines, which they're not saying what they are. But some of the people that got temporarily suspended hadn't done anything wrong, and then it was a quote unquote mistake. But no one reached out to them. Like they said that they reach out and do offer steps. Never was reached out to. Nothing.
Yeah, there was one guy who just has a blog on coding, and they banned him for no reason, and they never really gave him an apology, but they were withholding his payments for like 2 months. I mean, it's ridiculous. They've gotten ridiculous. So anyway, we saw this happen. We saw the damage done to Patreon's, the trust that people put in Patreon because of this. A lot of people left. Big people left. A lot of users left. And now, as of last week, Jack Conte, Patreon CEO, says the company's generous business business model is not sustainable as it sees rapid growth.
The money being given is given to these creators. It's not given to Patreon. It's given to the creators. Their generous business model, you basically charge a fee to process payments. That money is given to somebody else, not you. There's nothing generous about this. You process a fee. The money is not yours. You're not being generous. We're generously giving creators their money.
We're generously giving them 90% of their money. And then that's on top of PayPal fees. That's on top of other fees from other processors. So, Patreon, we've said before, Patreon is not necessary at all. It is not necessary. They actually stole the business model from webcomics people, from podcasters, people who are doing memberships on their own websites. Patreon basically said, yeah, we can cash in on that, because a lot of people don't want to don't want to bother setting up their own website. They don't want to bother doing all that. And so they lifted that. But this is going into a bigger issue because Patreon is late paying people this month. They're late paying people this month. But so let's...
I love these. Let's look at the key points.
Yeah, let's look at the key points, and then we'll talk about the bigger clusterfuck that is Patreon in February. Shira might be listening.
Shira says not to swear.
In 2019. Key points. Patreon needs to build new businesses and new services and new revenue lines in order to build a sustainable business.
They need to build new businesses and new services. We need to take your money to go build ourselves new businesses and services with your money. But at the end of the day, it's all somebody else's money. They're just getting a fee for being a broker.
Yeah, that's...
And now they need more money from you so they can go build more businesses for themselves.
Yeah, I think this is called fourth quarter was catastrophic because we had so many people jump ship, and now we realize that, you know, this isn't going to work. We need to do something else. I'm like, what the hell are you going to do, Patreon? Like, your whole business model is sponging money off of creators.
You get a fee you get a fee for brokering money. That's all you do.
Yeah, you're a payment processor, and you set yourself up that way.
Okay, keep going. This is great.
Patreon will send content creators more than $500 million to fund their membership business in 2019.
Patreon's going to give creators more than $500 million of their own money for their own businesses that was donated to them. They don't give you anything.
They give you nothing.
They give you nothing.
Your backers, here's a story.
Patreon gives you nothing.
Here is a story. When Patreon first started, they actually reached out to us. We had a webcomic. They reached out to us, and they wanted us to help them build Patreon up for webcomics. And, I asked them, I said, well, what kind of promotion or whatever are you going to give us? Will you recommend the campaign? Kind of like, Kickstarter does or YouTube does with videos. Like, is there searchability? Can you recommend campaigns? And they said, no, we don't do that. Basically, you bring your audience to us.
And let us have the money.
And I'm like, well, that's kind of a bullshit deal. That's a one-sided deal. Like, I give you 10% for the... And I bring my audience to Patreon, and then they maybe possibly back some other people because they're using your system, and you get 10% of my revenue. Like, this is not a good deal. And, it's not. It never has been a good deal.
They're going to send content creators more than $500 million to fund their stuff. The $500 million that's been given to them from the sponsors, the patrons.
This is bullshit.
They're going to give you your own money.
They're making it out like they're doing creators a service. They are doing nothing except centralizing a way to pay creators. And again, this is nothing that you can't do on your own.
More than $1 billion we paid out to creators since the company's inception. Yeah, with their own money.
Backer money, yes. There are more than 3 million patrons supporting more than 100,000 creators.
That's down.
And when those creators leave, again, this is the thing about Patreon is being a one-sided deal. Patreon depends on their creators bringing their audiences to them. And when they leave, they take their audiences with them. And when they leave in the numbers that they have been leaving in because of the Sargon of Akkad fiasco, they're taking a lot of patrons with them too. Everybody's Patreon is down for the most part because just users are leaving.
Well, that's so funny because in all these articles, which you're going to talk about in a minute, they're all going, how many? Oh, we're up. I bet you're not.
No, they're not. This is why they're freaking out, and this is leaning into some other things. So, okay, so they said they need to do some other stuff to be sustainable. And here's another thing about Patreon.
Your money, they take more of your money so they can make up more business for themselves.
Right, and Patreon, you have to realize, too, they've basically been living on venture capital. Okay, they've only been around for 5 or 6 years. This 5 years is when the venture capital money starts running out. So they have to be profitable. I don't think they're profitable. And the way that they word this is like, look at all the money we push to creators. Patreon is not bringing in $1 billion. Patreon is getting 10% of $1 billion over the course of 5 or 6 years. But they got to look good. They got to look good to another group of suckers to come in and give them more venture capital. For something that's completely pointless. There's no purpose.
Well, now they want you to give them more money so they can go start other businesses to make more money for themselves.
Right.
So again, it's a very one-sided deal.
Yeah, and you can see the damage control. And again, we're seeing a lot of things. We saw it with the news media. Now that people are looking at last year, they're looking at 2018. We saw a bunch of people get laid off in media. We're seeing budget cuts. We're seeing new plans announced. Patreon is in the same boat where they're looking at last year and they're like, okay, what are we going to do going forward? Within the last 10 or 12 days, you're seeing all kinds of stories put out there about how wonderful...
About 3 weeks, I guess.
Yeah, about how wonderful Patreon is. And this is all about the same time that it came out that they need other revenue sources.
Yeah, we've talked about this before with other things, like with the She-Ra thing. The friendly media, suddenly you see a big push and they're all saying the same things. It's the exact same thing. They probably went and got a PR firm.
Yeah, they got a PR firm.
They have money for that, to go reach out. Because there's no way all these places are going to start talking about them and have all this information out of nowhere.
Like, look at this. This is all within the last couple of weeks. There's one a few weeks ago, but most of them are within the last 2 weeks. Patreon, the billion-dollar platform for content creators. Internet is leaving ad-based revenue miles behind, says Patreon CEO. That's 10 days, 12 days. Now, this one was 3 weeks ago. Artist crowdfunding. Patreon saw content creators reel in $300 million.
Yeah, despite contract.
Here, 11 days ago. Thanks to 3 million patrons, Patreon will pay out $500 million to artists and creators this year. Patreon CEO, this is the one we're doing right now, says that the business model is not sustainable. This is a PR firm. There's a PR person or firm behind this because the timing. And I think the timing coincides with Patreon reeling from the fiasco last year, and they're looking at the numbers and are like, oh shit.
Well, now we gotta tell them there's more than there is, because otherwise people are gonna think we're failing.
They're gonna think we're failing, and we can't look like we're failing because we have to reel in some more backers.
Well, if you don't want to look like you're failing,
don't fail.
No, then what they're doing now is probably the wrong thing to do.
This is a bad look.
Well, no, I mean what's going on.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Which leads us to what's really going on here.
This is what the big oopsie is. The big oopsie is Patreon is late in processing payments, and they're offering all kinds of bullshit excuses. Why are they late this month? They never say. They never say. They haven't been late in a long time. I think the last time I actually dug through my email and found a similar message from 2014 when they were just starting.
I remember that.
Yeah, when they were just starting out, and that's understandable. So I think if I had to speculate, I think they're either holding on to the money as long as they can because they don't have as much of it as they did a few months ago, or they're trying to set up something else. So this is the email they sent out to creators, and I like how they're so casual about it too. Hey creators, as some of you know, our payments have been running slower than normal. Normally payments only take 24 hours to run, but this time it's on track to require 5 or 6 days. So people who depend on Patreon to pay their rent, you're fucked. Okay, while we have now processed the majority of payments, we expect that all of them will be completed by the end of the day on Wednesday. Hopefully, maybe, possibly, maybe. You can pay out the available funds in your account at any point in time. By Wednesday night, you should have all your monthly earnings available. Now, some people are saying that as of today, they've only got 20-30% showing they're processed. You'll minus any declined payments. If there are declined payments, we'll run the retry process through the month as usual. We understand that any delay to receiving your payments is unacceptable, and we built an alternative. Okay, this is interesting. We've built an alternate solution where Patreon will extend payout advance on your funds for creators who need it. You can now go to the payout preferences page and select payout advance when you withdraw your balance. Now, here's the thing about payout advance. I actually went to Patreon, but blocked the information out here. They're not real clear on what this is exactly, and they couldn't just implement this overnight. They had to know that there were going to be issues because this is kind of a big addition to their dashboard. They just kind of sprung this up like, hey guys, there's a payout advance. What they're saying is they will give you your current balance, whatever's processed, and then 90% of your expected earnings. Okay, so if you're expected to earn, $500, they'll give you, whatever, 400 and something, which would be the 90% you normally get because they take 10% cut. But what they're not saying is there an additional, very big, is there an additional 10% charge on top of the 10% charge they already charge you?
90%
of your expected earnings.
And my next question is, if you can't pay people on time, how can you go then take a payout advance for all these people and go and bump them to the front of the line and get them paid on time? I mean, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, if you can't pay yourself on time, how are you going to be able to do an advance payment? I mean, if your systems are so screwed up they can't pay the regular ones, how are they going to get an advanced one?
Yeah, I'm telling you, this was planned. And you know what? I think the plan is to gouge creators an additional 10% because they know these creators depend on this. So not only are they taking their, you've got your PayPal fees, you got your Patreon fees, but now I think they're going to start charging you to get your money in a timely fashion. This is one of Jack's new services. This is their plan. Like our new service, we're going to become a payday loan loan shark operation
with your own money.
With your own money. I mean, what in the actual fuck is going on here? This is not a good look. You know, and again, something like this would not be implemented overnight. It would take weeks, probably, to implement this, at least. And you can't tell me they didn't plan this. I think they planned to. I personally think they planned to withhold people's payouts to get them used to paying the advances to give PayPal or to give Patreon
when you go
extra
back
revenue.
To this article, it makes sense too when they're starting off with Patreon needs to build new businesses and new services and new revenue lines in order to build a sustainable business. It's not sustainable. They don't pay enough fees, that kind of stuff. And then this comes. Which one is it?
Number 3.
Then this comes up. I mean, I'm just like.
Yeah, just out of the blue, like, hey guys, we're late, but you know what? We got this new feature called the Payout Advance, which sounds a lot like Payout Advance sounds like a loan shark you would go to. You'd see it next to the cigarette store, between the cigarette store and the liquor store, the vape shop and the liquor store. You've got Patreon Payout Advance where you get your payday loans.
Yeah,
like this is
for
just
only 10% more of the already 10% you're paying. So for 20% total, you can go ahead and get your money that is your money to begin with.
Yeah,
on time.
Yeah, like I don't see any benefit. There is no benefit to creators, guys. This is what we're telling you. Patreon is there's no benefit. Now, we actually went out on our own a couple weeks ago and kind of soft launched our own Patreon alternative for us. We quit Patreon. If you go to clownfishsupport.com, pretty much everything that we could do through Patreon, like giving exclusive live streams and stuff like that, you can do through our site. This is what people did before Patreon. And you know what? They got to keep more of the money. Right. Podcasters and webcomics people have been doing this for years. Patreon just lifted, and actually Jack Conte admitted in an interview one time that he got the idea from musicians and podcasters.
Yeah, and what you can do, even if you have PayPal, is you can set up a recurring payment to people on PayPal and just let it go. Then you're only losing the fees that you'd be losing with PayPal anyway. You know what I'm saying? Like the person's not going to lose 5%. They're not going to be losing 10 or 20% every time you give them money. Because all Patreon did was just make it like one-stop shop to go support things, and then for double the fee. You know what I mean? And now they're going to double the fee again.
Yeah, but how many people are coming in for multiple creators? A lot of people just back one or two creators that they follow. That's what I said. You know, when Patreon reached out to us in 2013, they were banking on us bringing our audience to them. They had no plan to actually bring potential backers to Patreon. I mean, this is really a garbage business model. They basically are, they're just a broker. They're just a payment processor, and they're an unnecessary one. They're an unnecessary payment processor.
But their payment processor wants more of your money so they can go start new businesses for themselves.
Right.
That's what they flat out said this.
Yeah, they're flat out saying they're going to be gouging. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you guys. Even if you don't agree with Sargon of Akkad, you don't have to agree with Sargon of Akkad. This is a bigger issue. I think Patreon is absolutely, at this point, fleecing creators who are already starving artists.
And then they're making it out like they personally are giving people this money and benefiting them when it's not their money. It's the creators' money to begin with. The money is being given to the creators. They just process it. It's not their money. And you know, so you have first of all, you have this thing where, you know, there's no rubric. It's all arbitrary about whether or not they feel that you might have possibly violated some condition that you aren't aware of. And then they claim they reach out to you to work with you, but then there's some people saying that they never got any kind of outreach at all. They just got told they were done. And then, so you have that to begin with. So it's arbitrary. Who knows what the heck's going to take them off, and you're off there for any reason. It's kind of like Tumblr.
Yeah.
And then you go from that to, and on top of that, we think we should be getting more of your money, and now you can pay us 10% extra or whatever to get your payments on time, because they're all going to be later and later. Well, then just make, from now on, the payment date's going to be this date of the month. They can change it, but they're not saying that.
No, I think they're counting on the payments being late, and they're counting on creators needing to take an advance, and they're counting on charging creators to take an advance is what I think is going to happen. Now, here's what Twitter has to say. Twitter's not happy. Twitter's actually
I bet they're not.
They're not happy. We've got this guy that, here's the news. They're talking about the delays. With Patreon, I can finally understand how it is to be a true artist, poor and unhappy. Investigating potential resolutions, no ETA. So you're not going to address the issue that payday is currently 3 days late, not even an apology, not even an ETA. Guess I should call Verizon and say my payment has slowed down for no reason. We have bills to pay. This guy is actually, thanks for updating us. You're the best. Man, she's really not happy. How do you intend to make it up to your content creators that are losing money over this issue? By gouging you more fees, Jax Acer. By gouging you more fees. They will charge you more money to make it up to you. It's just not working for me. My income payments have fully stopped as of yesterday and have not moved since. ETA information. When there are bills to pay, we'd like to at least be able to explain ourselves, not just, I don't know, I don't have it. It's not slow for me. It's completely halted. Oh my God. Here, somebody's telling them to turn Patreon into consumer complaints in California. It's February 3rd, no ETA. 3 of 8 pledges completed, 5 pending. Wow, I have no money to live on. Guess I'll die. The best one, completely unacceptable. This one I love. Your updates are as clear as your policies and enforcement by your trust and safety team. Wow. I'll give you this, Patreon. You're consistent. I mean, this is just crazy. They don't plan to fix it, at least in the long term.
They're using dogs. They're bringing doggos into this.
Fuck you, pay me. Wow. Wow. Wow.
Have you checked the fascism? It's often the problem.
Have you checked the fascism? It's often the problem. Terrible job. You're ready to be reported to the Business Bureau. And there are rumors of, now I don't know if it's actually gone through or not, but the situation with Sargon, apparently somebody was looking into suing Patreon for bias and violating their own terms of service. So I think all of this is connected. Clearly, I think Patreon's like flipping out, trying to, either Jack Conte's trying to save his job by looking like a hero. Like, look at all I did for these creators by taking their money.
I think they're trying to appeal to more investors.
Yeah.
We're doing all this. And then I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to build a reason to charge people more. We are undercharging you. After all we do for you, we should be getting more than 5%. We should be getting like 25% of your money. Because, our investors think that they should get more money back, and we need to make it back somehow.
Well, the investors are probably looking at this like, how is grifting from a bunch of poor artists a viable long-term business model? Because they're thinking like bankers, and they're like, this isn't. So we got to come up with some other ways.
As I'm telling you, what they're going to do is
they
get you in. Yeah. They get you in. They're going to say that. Well, that was the introductory first 5 years introductory rate. And now that you're in there, and some people need it because clearly people are relying on it to live. Well, now that you need it and you don't have a choice, well, now the fees are going to go up to 20% or 25% or whatever. And they figure people are going to take it because a lot of people apparently are using it as what they make, and they'll pay the 25% because it's better than having nothing. So I think, and then they're putting all these feel good articles about how Patreon helps everyone, but poor Patreons, this isn't making enough money to be viable.
Poor Patreon.
After all they do for you. After
Patreon.
all they do for you.
Oh, Jack. Yeah, best advice I can give you from one content creator to another. If you're creating content, get the hell off of Patreon as fast as you can. This shit's gonna implode. I mean, I don't know how else to...
No, it's not going to implode. What they're going to do is they're going to start charging more.
Well,
I guarantee you.
It's going to implode because people are going to stop using it.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to stop using it. I think. I mean, it might take a few years for people to get weaned off of it, but I'm like, don't depend on Patreon because they're going to continue to gouge you. Mm-hmm. Leave. Go. You don't need them.
But they'll be like, go where?
Just start your own thing. Like I said, webcomics creators and podcasters and content creators... Years, decades before Patreon was even a thing, were taking payments and offering exclusive content through their websites. Now you're going to have to go build a website.
You have to learn to code.
You're going to have to learn to code. But if you can do that, this is going to benefit you in the long run because you control it. And, like I said, clownfishsupport.com, we have ours set up. We're kind of in the preliminary, but this is the way everybody used to do it, and I think we need to go back to that because these companies have way too much control And their terms of service are too arbitrary.
What's going to happen
bullshit.
now is somebody else is probably going to start a competitor, because there really isn't one that much for this. I'm waiting for the competitor to pop up that's going to offer the low fees, and they're not going to be so ridiculous about who they decide should and shouldn't be on the platform.
Yeah.
And I won't be surprised if another platform pops up pretty soon.
They tried that. They had a service called Subscribestar, and there were some shenanigans.
They locked it with PayPal and stuff.
Using PayPal, and there's some shenanigans.
I'm sure that there's one going to pop up. I just, I betcha.
Yeah, you're right, Jack. This isn't sustainable. This is bullshit. So, final advice I can give you. I'm sure Geeky agrees with me. Just try to get off of Patreon.
Well, I just think when they're flat out saying that we don't make enough now, that says they're going to raise. Yeah. They're going to raise their fees more.
And again, this is on top of all the other bullshit. It's not just like one instance of bullshit. Like, okay, they screwed up. They're trying to make it right. It's no big deal. This is an ongoing pattern of bullshit, and it is up to you if you want to put up with it or not. We've decided it's not worth it, because I don't know where this is going to go, and I don't want to depend on them and then have them just like close down one day.
Well, what they need more money in like 6 months. Well, now you can have an advanced payout, but it's 80%.
Yeah, I figured out my living expenses. I'm making a couple $1,000s a month on Patreon, and then all of a sudden, hey, now it's we're gonna start gouging you another 10% or another 15%, or we're only gonna do payouts quarterly now. Whoops, sorry, we didn't tell you.
Yeah,
we're gonna do payouts quarterly.
We need money to just go start our other businesses that we were mentioning on the other article. So Patreon not in a good place right now. Again, personal advice, and it's just an opinion. Get the hell off the platform if you can. That's my opinion. Okay, is there anything else you want to add? No.
Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, rants, gaming videos, art videos, and more. This has been Neon and Geeky. We will talk to you later.
Bye.
Hey guys, thanks for watching Clownfish TV. Please consider supporting the channel. Go to clownfishsupport.com. That's clownfishsupport.com. And if you want to join our community, go to clownfishtalk.com. That's clownfishtalk.com. Please subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. We will talk to you next time.